In the week leading up to the Brazilian Grand Prix, the 58th Academy Awards were held, co-hosted by Jane Fonda, Alan Alda and Robin Williams. One of the big winners on the night was Out of Africa, a romantic epic adapted from the 1937 memoir of Danish writer Karen Blixen, writing under the name of Isak Dinesen. It won Best Picture and Best Director for Sidney Pollack, as well as Best Adapted Screenplay, Sound, Art Direction and Cinematography, winning in 7 of its nominated 11 categories. Steven Spielberg's epic The Colour Purple had also been nominated in 11 categories, but didn't win a single Oscar. John Huston became the oldest Best Director nominee at 79 for Prizzi's Honour, while his daughter Angelica won the Best Supporting Actress for the same movie, becoming the first third-generation Oscar winner. And an article in the New York Times alleged that Kurt Waldheim had been involved in war crimes during the Second World War. Kurt Waldheim had been Secretary-General of the United Nations from 1972 to 1981 and was now a candidate for the presidency of his native Austria. Although he had always claimed he was medically discharged in 1942 and had only ever been a clerk and an interpreter, new evidence had come to light that suggested he had in fact been involved in mass murders, a view backed by the World Jewish Congress, though no definitive proof could be found. Meanwhile, the Grand Prix circus was setting up in Brazil, and as usual the first race of the season arrived amid much rumour, speculation and poring over testing times. Most of the teams had taken part in the pre-season tyre test at Jacarepaguá. The Haas Lola team had pulled out with their Ford engines still not ready, and had to revert to the 1985 Hart engine car for the time being, though there were also rumours about a boardroom coup at Beatrice which could impact their finances. A few weeks before the race, returning from a test at Paul Ricard, Frank Williams had lost control of his rental car and rolled it over. Journalist Peter Windsor, Frank's passenger, was mostly uninjured, but Williams hit the roof of the car and was airlifted to hospital with spinal injuries, which, it was known by the time of the Grand Prix, meant Frank would be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. The Williams team set off for Brazil with Patrick Head in charge, and there was a lot of support from around the paddock as Frank watched from his hospital bed. Between Frank Williams's accident, the new chassis, new engine, new fuel regulations, and new driver, the team might have been trying to play down their expectations, but not the fans, for the last of those elements was of course Nelson Piquet, hero of his hometown Rio, where the race was to take place. For the last couple of years, his performances at home had been disappointingly limited by his unpredictable equipment, but it had never affected his support, and now with the prospect of a real battle of the Brazilians between Piquet and Senna, the Jacarepaguá circuit was as full as ever. They were not disappointed. Despite all their troubles, the Williams cars didn't seem to have lost any form since the end of 1985, and Mansell and Piquet dominated qualifying. Right up until Ayrton Senna went out in the black and gold Lotus at the end of Saturday afternoon and snatched pole from Piquet, making it an all-Brazilian front row for the Brazilian Grand Prix, with Mansell third. The Ligier team also picked up where they'd left off in 1985 with Arnoux and Lafitte next on the grid, then Alboretto's Ferrari 6th. Keke Rosberg outqualified Prost at the first time of asking, with Johansson between them, and then Patrese rounded out the top 10 in the new Brabham. Johnny Dumfries was a very creditable 11th at his first attempt. The Benettons were 12th and 16th in their first race under new ownership. Tambay was an encouraging 13th in last year's Lola, and with just 25 entries all would qualify, with new boy Nannini bringing up the rear, as might be expected, nearly 3 seconds off his teammate De Cesaris. In the traditional blazing heat, 25 cars lined up in front of a packed house, and the lights went green on a new season, with Mansell forcibly inserting his Williams between the two home heroes and squeezing his new teammate out to take second, then proceeding to harry Senna for the lead. Up until he made an ambitious move, Senna stuck to his line and tipped Mansell into a spin. It was not only a carbon copy of the incident between Rosberg and Senna at Brands Hatch the previous year, but also meant that Mansell had been taken out by Senna in 2 races in a row. So the fans saw Senna and Piquet come back round in first and second places at the end of the lap. Meanwhile, though neither the Brazilian TV director nor the fans at the circuit cared much, Arnoux was running third, Alboretto fourth, Rosberg fifth and Johansson sixth. The two Brazilians were setting a scorching pace, though, and rapidly leaving Arnoux and the rest behind. On lap 3, after trailing closely, Piquet pulled out from behind and smartly took the lead from Senna. Behind them, Alboretto had moved up to third and was occasionally visible in shot as the Piquet and Senna battle tore away into the distance, and unseen by almost everyone, Jones had made very good progress up to 10th, before dropping out with a fuel injection problem on lap 6. Rosberg joined his fellow ex-champion in retirement a lap later, while Prost was doing his usual thing and moving up through the field, and the world got its first look at the new Benetton in the pits, with Fabi's brightly coloured engine cover being taken off by the even more brightly coloured mechanics. Prost overtook Patrese on lap 8 to move into the points, as Senna dropped off Piquet and settled in to play the long game, about 6 seconds behind him, with Alboreto about the same distance behind the Lotus, and still in touch. By lap 12, Piquet was among the first of the backmarkers, and Prost was now fourth and motoring, just over a second behind Alboreto and closing fast. Soon enough he was right behind the Ferrari, and Michele seemed keen to renew his rivalry with Prost, shutting the door on his first attempt, but he couldn't prevent the McLaren going through next time around, and the Brazilian fans were starting to worry. Some drivers were by now starting to come in for tyres, Johansson doing so just as Prost passed his teammate, and a couple of laps later Piquet peeled in from the lead, putting Senna in front, while Alboreto also came in on the same lap. Senna was leading, but Prost was now right on his tail, and on lap 20 he was through at the same place he'd taken Alboreto, to take the lead. By this time there were only 16 cars still running, the combination of heat and early season bugs taking their toll as Ghinzani, both Minardi drivers, Sierra, Palmer and Patrese all joined Mansell, Jones and Rosberg in taking an early bath. Senna was next into the pits, a decent 12-second stop keeping him in contention as he rejoined 5th behind Lafitte, who he quickly overtook for 4th. Prost, though, showed no signs of coming in, as Piquet bore down on him. Nelson was certainly catching up, but looked like he was on course for 2 stops to Prost's 1, so it was going to be nip and tuck by the end. Prost seemed to slow a bit, allowing De Angelis to unlap himself, and soon Piquet was right alongside and into the lead, to a huge cheer from the stands that was audible over the whining turbos. Johansson's brake failed and put him into a sand trap as he recovered from his tyre stop, and then it was Prost's turn to come in for tyres. A slick sub-10-second stop saw him emerge just as Senna blew past in the Lotus, so it was Piquet, Senna, Prost once more, with the Ligiers still running well, Lafitte and Arnoux 4th and 5th, and Brundle now up to 6th and having a lively off-camera battle with Dumfries. Piquet had the lead quite comfortably by some 25 seconds as half-distance approached. Just then there was another cheer from the crowd as Prost pulled back into the pits and climbed out. A rare double failure for the tagged Porsche engines had seen to his race, although the TV director was more interested in watching Piquet circulate in the lead, cutting away to watch Dumfries take Brundle for 5th, apparently under the impression that it was Senna lapping him. Martin stopped for tyres a couple of laps later, and Alboreto took over 6th. As the second half of the race got underway, and teams started thinking about making second stops in about 10 laps' time, the director decided to watch René Arnoux for a while, just for a change of pace. The Frenchman had won his first race in Brazil, at the last race at the Interlagos circuit in São Paulo in 1980, but he'd never had much luck at Jacarepaguá. The only time he'd scored points here was last year, 4th in the Ferrari, and then he'd been sacked straight afterwards. He was currently running 4th for Ligier and presumably hoping to avoid an attack of déjà vu. Behind him was still Dumfries, looking pretty assured in the Lotus on his debut, even if he was about to be lapped by Senna, and then on lap 35, Alboreto pulled off with a fuel system failure, and the field was now down to 11 runners with just over 20 laps to go. Dumfries lost his 5th place with some trouble or other that caused him to come in for a consultation and a new set of tyres for good measure, stationary for nearly 40 seconds before getting away, a little hesitantly. As he left, Piquet arrived for his second set of tyres, returning to the track just behind Senna, who was in the next time around to restore Piquet to the lead. So on lap 42, with the stops mostly done, Piquet led Senna by 19 seconds, with Arnoux and Lafitte running together and last men on the lead lap, about 20 seconds behind Ayrton, then Berger and Brundle, until Gerhard made a pit stop of his own. Boutsen had been in and out of the pits with some sort of exhaust issue before the Arrows team finally pulled the plug, and then there were 10. Behind the Brazilians, the 2 Frenchmen in the Ligier were having a lively battle over 3rd place, with Arnoux and Lafitte both looking to stamp their authority on the team. Jacques, currently 4th, was the latest in a string of teammates to find out how difficult it can be to get past René Arnoux when he doesn't want you to, and the result was the best entertainment on the track as the race moved into its closing stages. Jacques made it past René in the end, and that was about that. After 61 action-packed laps, the top 4 had been 4 of the top 5 on the grid. Nelson Piquet won his first race for the Williams team, which would no doubt cheer Frank Williams up no end, with Senna coming home second, 35 seconds down in the end, but a Brazilian 1-2 in Rio to delight the fans, whose roars could probably be heard in Frank Williams' hospital room in London. Jacques Laffite began 1986 where he ended 1985 on the podium, and Arnoux finishing fourth, the same place he had last year. Martin Brundle came in fifth to finally get his first official career points, and Berger nursed his ailing Benetton home to take a debut point for the new team. Or a return to the points after a bad year for Tolman, whichever you prefer. Streff and De Angelis were the last serious runners, with Dumfries and Farby making up the finishers, both several laps down after extended pit stops. So there was plenty to discuss in the 3-week gap before the European season kicked off at the first Spanish Grand Prix since 1981 at the all-new Circuito de Jerez.